The first time I saw Julian Carter, he was a blur of defiance, sprinting across the rain-soaked football field, dodging tackles like he was born to outrun the world. I was 16, shivering under the bleachers at Westbridge High, a small-town school in upstate New York, hiding from the jeers of my classmates. By the end of that day, I'd learn his name, and my heart would never be the same. My name is Ethan Ramsey, and I was the quiet kid who clung to the edges of every room. At 16, I was lanky, with messy blonde hair and glasses that never stayed in place. I'd known I was gay since middle school, but in a town like Westbridge, where pickup trucks and church suppers defined life, that truth was a secret I buried deep. Julian, though, he was different. 17, broad-shouldered, with curly brown hair and a grin that could light up the gloomiest upstate winter. He was the star running back of our football team. Everyone loved him, or so it seemed, but I saw something else in his eyes. A flicker of restlessness, like he was searching for something no one else could see. It was October 2018, and the air smelled of wet leaves and teenage rebellion. I was in the library, my sanctuary, hunched over a dog-eared copy of The Great Gatsby, when Julian walked in. He wasn't alone. His teammates trailed him, laughing too loudly for the quiet space. I kept my head down, but my eyes betrayed me, stealing glances at him. He wore his Letterman jacket, sleeves pushed up, revealing forearms tanned from summer. Then, unexpectedly, he broke away from his friends and slid into the chair across from me. "You're Ethan, right?" His voice was low, almost conspiratorial, like he was sharing a secret. I froze, my pencil hovering over my notebook. Yeah. How'd you know?" He leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand, his hazel eyes studying me. "You're always here, nose in a book." I noticed. My heart thudded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. Julian Carter, the guy who could have anyone's attention, noticed me? I mumbled something incoherent, and he laughed. A warm, unguarded sound that made my stomach flip. That was the moment I knew I was in trouble. Over the next few weeks, Julian found ways to talk to me. It started small. A nod in the hallway, a question about homework, a joke about our history teacher's bad ties. But soon, he was seeking me out after school, lingering by my locker, asking about my favorite books. I learned he wasn't just a jock. He loved poetry, though he'd never admit it to his teammates, and he dreamed of studying marine biology, far from Westbridge's small-minded grip. He was magnetic, and I was helplessly drawn to him. One chilly November evening, we ended up at the town's old pier, a rickety wooden stretch over Lake Ontario. The sky was a bruise of purples and blues, and the water lapped softly below us. We sat side by side, our shoulders brushing, talking about everything and nothing. Then, out of nowhere, he turned to me, his face serious. "Ethan, do you ever feel like you're pretending to be someone you're not?" His voice was raw, vulnerable in a way I'd never heard. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. All the time, he looked at me, his eyes searching mine, and then he did something I'd only dreamed of. He reached for my hand. His fingers were warm, calloused from football, and they intertwined with mine like they'd always belonged there. "I don't want to pretend with you," he whispered. That was our beginning. A stolen moment on a pier, two boys daring to feel something real in a world that demanded we hide. But Westbridge wasn't kind to boys like us. Rumors spread faster than wildfire, and by the next week, I overheard whispers in the locker room. "Julian's been hanging with that weird kid. You think they're you know?" The words cut like knives, and I saw the same fear in Julian's eyes when he overheard them too. We made a pact to keep our feelings secret, to protect each other. No more hand-holding in public, no lingering looks. We'd meet in hidden places, the library's back corner, the pier at dusk, an abandoned barn on the edge of town. Every moment with him felt like stealing time from a world that didn't want us to have it. But the secrecy took its toll. Julian's teammates started to notice his distance, and my classmates mocked me more viciously, sensing something they couldn't quite name. One night, under the flickering light of a street lamp, Julian kissed me. It was quick, desperate, like he was afraid the world would catch us. My heart soared, but fear followed close behind. What if someone saw? I whispered, my voice trembling. They won't, he said, but his eyes betrayed his doubt. We just have to be careful. Being careful meant lying to our friends, our families, ourselves. It meant Julian laughing off questions about why he wasn't dating cheerleaders, and me dodging my mom's probing looks when I came home late. It meant loving each other in fragments, in moments no one else could see. But even in the shadows, our love grew, fierce and unyielding, like a flower pushing through concrete. By spring, the pressure was unbearable. Julian's coach pulled him aside, warning him about distractions that could cost him his scholarship to Syracuse University. My dad, a stern man who worked long hours at the factory, started asking why I was so secretive. The town felt like it was closing in, its judgment suffocating us. Yet every time I thought I couldn't take it anymore, Julian would find me, his smile a lifeline, his touch a reminder that we were worth fighting for. One afternoon, we skipped class and drove to a secluded meadow an hour outside Westbridge. Lying in the grass, the sun warm on our faces, we talked about a future where we didn't have to hide. After high school, Julian said, his voice fierce with hope, we'll leave, go somewhere no one cares who we love. California, maybe, or Seattle. I wanted to believe him, but fear gnawed at me. What if we can't? What if this is all we get? He turned to me, his hand cupping my face. Ethan, this isn't all. I promise you it's not. But promises are fragile in a town like Westbridge. That night, as we drove back, we didn't notice the car trailing us. We didn't know that someone had seen us in that meadow, our hands entwined, our laughter too free. We didn't know that the secret we'd fought so hard to protect was about to unravel. The next morning, Westbridge High buzzed with a different kind of energy, sharp, electric, dangerous. I felt it the moment I stepped into the hallway, my backpack slung over one shoulder. Eyes followed me, whispers trailing like smoke. By lunch, the rumors had a name. Julian and I had been seen. Not just together, but together, holding hands, too close, too obvious. Someone had spotted us in the meadow, and now the whole school knew. Julian found me behind the gym, where I was hiding, my heart pounding like a trapped animal's. He looked pale, his usual confidence replaced by something brittle. Ethan, we need to talk, he said, his voice low. His eyes darted around, checking for eavesdroppers. They're saying things, bad things. I know, I whispered, my stomach churning. What do we do? He ran a hand through his curls, frustration etched into every line of his face. We deny it, say it's a lie. They can't prove anything. But denial only works when people want to believe you. By the end of the day, the football team had cornered Julian in the locker room. I wasn't there, but I heard about it from Sarah, a quiet girl in my English class who'd overheard. They'd called him names I won't repeat, questioned his loyalty to the team, his masculinity, everything. Julian laughed it off, played the part of the carefree jock. But when he met me later at the pier, his eyes were red-rimmed. They're my friends, he said, his voice breaking. Or they were supposed to be. How do they turn on me like this? I wanted to hold him, to tell him it would be okay. But fear kept me frozen. Instead, I sat beside him, our knees touching, the lake's cold air wrapping around us. We'll get through this, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. The next few weeks were a blur of survival. Julian and I barely spoke at school, keeping our distance to throw off suspicion. But the rumors didn't die. They grew, fed by the town's hunger for scandal. My dad started asking pointed questions at dinner, his voice heavy with suspicion. "You're spending a lot of time with that Carter boy," he'd say, his eyes narrowing. I'd mumble excuses, my heart racing, knowing one wrong word could expose us. Julian's life unraveled faster. His teammates iced him out, leaving him out of plays during practice, whispering behind his back. His coach, a grizzled man named Hargrove, called him into his office and told him to get his head straight or risk losing his starting position. Julian told me about it late one night, his voice shaking over the phone. "They think I'm a liability now," he said. "Like who I am makes me less." I wanted to scream that he was enough, more than enough, but words felt useless against the weight of Westbridge's judgment. Instead, I snuck out to meet him at the abandoned barn, our safest hideout. Under the creaking rafters, surrounded by the musty smell of hay, we held each other, our breaths mingling in the dark. "I don't care what they think," Julian murmured against my shoulder. "I just want you." But wanting each other wasn't enough to stop the world from closing in. A week later, someone spray-painted a slur on Julian's locker. The school called it vandalism, but they didn't investigate. The message was clear: we weren't welcome. I started finding notes in my backpack, crude, hateful words scrawled in Sharpie. I didn't tell Julian. He was already carrying too much. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday, the air crisp with the promise of winter. Julian and I had planned to meet at the pier, but he didn't show. I waited for an hour, my texts unanswered, my stomach twisting with dread. Finally, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "Check the football field. Now." I ran, my sneakers pounding the pavement, my breath visible in the cold. When I reached the field, I saw Julian standing alone under the floodlights, his Letterman jacket discarded on the grass. A group of guys, his teammates, stood in a loose circle around him, their voices loud and mocking. I couldn't hear their words, but I saw Julian's shoulders slump, his fists clenched at his sides. "Leave him alone," I shouted, my voice cracking as I pushed through the crowd. The guys turned, surprised, then laughed. One of them, a linebacker named Derek, stepped forward, his face twisted with contempt. "Look, it's the other one," he sneered. "You two make a cute couple." Julian's eyes met mine, a mix of fear and defiance. "Ethan, go," he said, his voice steady but desperate. "Please." I didn't move, couldn't. Instead, I stepped closer, my heart hammering. "I'm not leaving you." Derek shoved me, hard, and I stumbled back, my glasses slipping down my nose. Julian lunged forward, pushing Derek away, and for a moment, it looked like a fight would break out. But then Coach Hargrove appeared, his whistle shrill in the night air. "Enough," he barked. The team scattered, leaving Julian and me alone under the glaring lights. Hargrove looked at us, his face unreadable. "You boys are causing a lot of trouble," he said. "Fix this, Carter, or you're off the team." That night, Julian and I drove to the meadow again, our silence heavy with unspoken fears. We sat in his beat-up Chevy, the engine off, the windows fogging up from our breath. "I can't lose football," Julian said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's my ticket out of here." "I know," I said, my throat tight. "But what about us?" He turned to me, his eyes shining with tears. "You're the only thing keeping me sane, Ethan. But I don't know how to do this. How to be me and keep everything else." We didn't have answers, but we had each other. We kissed, slow and desperate, as if we could hold onto this moment forever. But deep down, I knew the world was waiting to tear us apart. The weeks after the football field incident were a tightrope walk. Julian and I clung to our secret meetings, but every moment felt stolen, fragile. Westbridge High became a battlefield, its hallways lined with judgmental eyes and whispered slurs. Julian threw himself into football, trying to prove he was still the star they wanted. But the strain showed in his tense shoulders, his forced smiles. I retreated further into books, avoiding everyone but Sarah, who'd become an unexpected ally, slipping me notes of encouragement when no one was looking. By December, the pressure reached a breaking point. Julian's parents, devout churchgoers, started asking why he was so withdrawn. My dad, meanwhile, confronted me one evening, his voice cold. "People are talking, Ethan, about you and that boy. Tell me it's not true." I lied, my face burning, but his eyes lingered, heavy with doubt. That night, I snuck out to meet Julian at the barn. He was already there, pacing, his breath visible in the freezing air. "They're watching us," he said, his voice low. "My dad found a text from you on my phone." He didn't say anything, but I saw his face. "What do we do?" I asked, my heart sinking. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice cracking. "But I can't lose you." We held each other, the barn's wooden walls shielding us from the world. But the world wouldn't stay out forever. The next day, a teacher caught us lingering too long by my locker, our hands brushing. She didn't say anything, but her raised eyebrow was enough. By afternoon, the principal called us both into his office. Mr. Delaney, a balding man with a permanent frown, leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled. "Boys," he said, "we've had complaints about inappropriate behavior. This is a small town. People talk." Julian's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. I felt my face burn, my hands shaking in my lap. "It's just rumors," I mumbled, hating how weak I sounded. Delaney sighed. "I don't care what's true. I care about this school's reputation. Keep your distance, or there'll be consequences." We left his office in silence, the weight of his words crushing us. That night, Julian didn't meet me at the pier. He texted instead, "Need space." "I'm sorry." My heart sank, but I didn't push. I knew he was scared, just like me. For 2 weeks, we barely spoke. I saw him at school, surrounded by his teammates, laughing too loudly, his eyes avoiding mine. It hurt more than the slurs, more than the notes in my backpack. I felt like I was losing him, piece by piece. Sarah noticed, slipping me a note in English class. "He's still in there. Don't give up." Then, just before winter break, everything exploded. I was walking home when Derek and 2 other teammates cornered me behind the gas station. "You're the one messing with Julian," Derek spat, shoving me against the wall. My glasses fell, skittering across the pavement. Before I could react, a fist connected with my jaw, and pain bloomed, sharp and hot. I don't know how Julian found out, but he was there in minutes, his car screeching to a stop. He pulled Derek off me, his face a mask of fury. Touch him again, and I swear. He didn't finish, but his fists were clenched, ready. Derek laughed, cold and cruel. "You're done, Carter. Everyone knows what you are." Julian helped me up, his hands gentle but trembling. We drove to the meadow, my face throbbing, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "I'm done hiding," he said finally, his voice fierce. "I don't care what they think anymore." I looked at him, my vision blurry without my glasses. "What about football? Your scholarship?" He shook his head. "You're worth more than that, Ethan." We kissed, the world fading away, but reality crept back too soon. The next day, Coach Hargrove benched Julian for the season's final game, citing team morale. The school suspended me for a week, claiming I'd provoked the fight. Our parents were called, and the truth came spilling out. My dad's silence was worse than any lecture. Julian's mom cried, quoting Bible verses, while his dad refused to look at him. Winter break was a blur of tension. Julian and I met in secret, our love a quiet rebellion against the world's anger. We made plans to leave Westbridge after graduation, to find a place where we could be ourselves. But the town wasn't done with us. When school resumed, someone leaked a photo of us kissing, taken in the meadow months ago. It spread like wildfire on social media, in group chats everywhere. The backlash was swift. Julian's teammates shunned him completely. My classmates left more notes, crueler than before. But something else happened too. Sarah started a petition demanding the school address bullying. A few other students signed it, then more. A teacher, Ms. Larson, spoke up in our defense, risking her job. For the first time, we weren't alone. One night, Julian showed up at my window, his face lit by moonlight. "I'm not giving up," he said, his voice steady. "Not on us, not on anything." I climbed out, and we ran to the pier, our laughter echoing in the dark. We were scared, bruised, but together. And in that moment, I knew we'd fight for this no matter what came next. The leaked photo changed everything. Westbridge High became a pressure cooker, with Julian and me at its center. The petition Sarah started gained traction, over 100 signatures in a week, but it also sparked a backlash. Parents called the school, demanding action against disruptive influences. At home, my dad barely spoke to me, his silence louder than any argument. Julian's parents sent him to a pastor for counseling, which he endured in stoic silence, texting me late at night. "I'm still here. I'm still yours." We clung to our stolen moments, meeting at the barn or the meadow, but the weight of the town's judgment was crushing. Julian's scholarship to Syracuse hung by a thread. Coach Hargrove hinted that controversy could cost him his spot. I faced my own battles. Classmates who once ignored me now openly mocked me, and my suspension left a mark on my record, threatening my college applications. Yet amidst the chaos, there were glimmers of hope. Ms. Larson organized a diversity club, a small act of defiance that gave us a safe space to breathe. Sarah and a few others joined, their support a lifeline. One day, a shy freshman named Mia approached me in the library, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm like you," she said, her eyes darting nervously. "Thank you for being brave." Her words hit me hard, reminding me that our fight wasn't just for us. By February, the school board held a meeting to address the controversy. Julian and I weren't allowed to attend, but Sarah live texted me updates. Parents shouted about traditional values. Ms. Larson and a few allies argued for inclusivity. The board's decision was a compromise. No expulsions, but stricter conduct rules. Felt like a hollow victory, but it bought us time. Julian and I decided to take a stand. We couldn't change Westbridge overnight, but we could show the world we weren't ashamed. We started small, sitting together at lunch, ignoring the stares. Julian wore a rainbow pin on his jacket, a quiet rebellion. I wrote an essay for the school paper, anonymous but unmistakable, about loving someone in a town that didn't understand. To our surprise, the editor, a senior named Claire, published it. "It's good," she said simply, her eyes kind. The tide began to shift, slowly. A few classmates stopped whispering when we passed. A teacher, Mr. Patel, pulled me aside to say he'd read my essay and admired my courage. But not everyone softened. Derek and his crew escalated their harassment, keying Julian's car, leaving threatening notes. One night, they followed us to the pier, their headlights glaring in the dark. We ran, hearts pounding, hiding in the woods until they left. "We're not safe here," I said, my voice trembling. Julian nodded, his face grim. "We need to get out. Soon." Graduation was 3 months away, an eternity and a lifeline. We applied to colleges far from Westbridge, Julian to the University of Washington, me to UCLA. We dreamed of a life where we could walk hand in hand without fear, but the present was a minefield. My dad finally confronted me, his voice shaking with anger and confusion. "Why can't you just be normal?" he asked. I didn't have an answer, only tears. Julian's parents were worse. His mom found a letter I'd written him, full of promises for our future. They grounded him, took his phone, and forbade him from seeing me. But Julian was stubborn. He'd sneak out, climbing through my window at midnight, his kisses fierce with defiance. "They can't stop us," he'd whisper, and I'd believe him, if only for a moment. Then came the night of the spring talent show. Julian had signed up to read a poem, a secret he'd kept even from me. When he took the stage, the auditorium fell silent, all eyes on the boy who'd become a lightning rod. He stood tall, his voice steady, reading lines about love that refused to bend, about hearts that beat stronger in the dark. I sat in the back, tears streaming down my face, knowing he was speaking to me. The crowd was mixed. Some clapped, others sat stone-faced. But for the first time, Julian didn't care. He found me after, pulling me into a hug in the empty hallway. "I meant every word," he said. "I'm done hiding who I am." That night, we drove to the meadow, lying under the stars. We talked about Seattle, about apartments with big windows and coffee shops where we could be ourselves. For the first time, the future felt real, not just a dream. But as we drove back, a police car pulled us over. The officer, a friend of Julian's dad, claimed we'd been trespassing. It was a warning, clear as day: stop or face worse. We didn't stop. We couldn't. Our love was the only thing keeping us whole. Spring in Westbridge was a paradox. Blooming flowers and bitter hearts. Julian and I were counting down to graduation, our escape plan taking shape. We'd been accepted to our dream schools, Julian to the University of Washington, me to UCLA. The thought of leaving Westbridge kept us going, but the town wasn't ready to let us go quietly. The police warning was just the beginning. Julian's parents doubled down, threatening to cut him off if he didn't fix himself. My dad, though quieter, made it clear he'd never accept me. The school was a battleground, with Derek's crew relentless in their harassment. They slashed Julian's tires, left more notes in my locker, and once cornered me in the bathroom, their threats chillingly specific. Sarah and Ms. Larson intervened when they could, but they couldn't be everywhere. Yet our love grew stronger, forged in defiance. We found new allies, a junior named Lucas, who came out as bi after Julian's poem, a cheerleader named Ava, who started wearing a rainbow bracelet in solidarity. The diversity club grew, a small beacon in the storm. Ms. Larson organized a workshop on inclusivity, and though half the room walked out, those who stayed listened. Change was slow, but it was real. One April evening, Julian and I snuck to the pier, our old refuge. The lake was calm, the air warm with spring. We sat on the edge, our feet dangling, our hands clasped. "We're almost free," Julian said, his voice soft but certain. "Just a few more weeks." I leaned against him, my heart full. "I can't wait to walk down a street with you and not look over my shoulder." He kissed my forehead, his lips warm. "We will. I promise." But promises don't stop the world. The next day, Derek and his crew ambushed Julian after practice, shoving him into the bleachers. I wasn't there, but Lucas saw it and ran to find me. By the time I reached the field, Julian was on the ground, his lip bleeding, Derek looming over him. I didn't think. I ran forward, tackling Derek, my anger outweighing my fear. The fight was chaos, fists and shouts, until Coach Hargrove broke it up. This time, the consequences were severe. Julian was expelled from the team, his scholarship gone. I was suspended again, my college acceptance at risk. We sat in the meadow that night, bruised and broken, but together. I don't regret it, Julian said, his hand in mine. You're worth everything. Graduation day arrived like a miracle. We walked across the stage, heads high, ignoring the whispers. Sarah and our allies cheered loudly, drowning out the hate. Julian's parents didn't show. My dad sat in the back, his face unreadable. But when Julian found me after, pulling me into a hug in front of everyone, I didn't care who saw. We left Westbridge that summer, driving cross-country to Seattle. The road trip was our first taste of freedom, gas station snacks, loud music, stolen kisses at rest stops. We rented a tiny apartment near the University of Washington, its windows overlooking the city. I transferred to a local college to be closer to Julian, and we built a life together piece by piece. Westbridge didn't vanish completely. We heard from Sarah that the diversity club grew, that Ms. Larson was promoted, that Derek faced consequences for his actions. Julian's parents eventually reached out, their words cautious but kinder. My dad sent a letter, short but sincere, apologizing for his silence. Healing was slow, but it started. Years later, we returned to Westbridge for a reunion. We walked through the high school hand in hand, no longer hiding. The pier was still there, weathered but standing, and we carved our initials into the wood, a quiet claim on the place that tried to break us. As we stood there, the lake reflecting the sunset, Julian turned to me, his eyes bright. "We made it, Ethan," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're still here." I kissed him, the world soft around us, and knew he was right. Our love had been forced into the shadows, but it never stopped growing. It carried us through hate, through fear, to a life we'd fought for, a life where we could be us unapologetically. And that was enough.